in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
What is up, everybody? This is Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. I'm without my co-host, Ian Gibson. Ian was in Austin for the Florida-Texas game, and sad he had to see that. But anyways, let's get into it. This is the Week 11 recap show. A lot of big games, a lot of real big upsets. Friday, let's begin with it because it was the one game that I actually predicted exactly to a T. UCLA and Iowa, 20-17. UCLA wins. I thought that UCLA was going to be decent offensively, but I didn't think that Garbers was going to implode as bad as he did in this game. UCLA might have actually ran away with this game quite easily, but Garbers really kind of, is at least, let's see how many picks he had. He had 2 picks, and I think he had a fumble lost, resulted in a touchback. Yeah, he was very rough for a lot of this game, but he still had a lot of good plays, led them to 2 touchdown passes. And TJ Harden running for UCLA had a really good game. Logan Loya, wide receiver for UCLA, had a good game. Jacob Gill for Iowa really looked good. 138 yards, made some big plays. It says Brandon Sullivan for Iowa only was 6 of 9, which is kind of ridiculous. And then the other quarterback for them was 3 of 6. So they were 9 of 15. And I don't know. I mean, whatever. Iowa is like one of these inept, offensively challenged teams that struggles to do anything. They do a lot of things defensively, which they did in this game as well, and kept them in the game. And it's kind of crazy because UCLA was like 1-5 like 3 weeks ago, and now the 3 straight wins. They're 4-5. They have the same record as USF and Florida, and people left UCLA for dead, and they're right in the same place. I think they have the same record as USC as well. Kind of remarkable. They've turned it around so quickly. I think the key for UCLA has been the offense, which, up until 4 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when they were 1-5, they had only scored 17 or less points in every game that they played. Since that point, they've really turned it around. I know it was only 20 in this game, but still was enough to win more than the 17. And their defense is still really stout. They have been very, very good at, all phases of the game defensively. And then I will say Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator, who used to be at Kansas City with the Chiefs, who led them to 2 Super Bowl wins. He's really been remarkable. I think it was a struggle to navigate the college game plan, or just the how he was going to call games. And I think it didn't work at first. Garbers obviously struggled as well, and he still is somewhat hamstrung by his abilities, but the game plans and the play calling has been way better the last couple of weeks, and they look amazing. The effort's there. The team is definitely fighting for potential bowl game, which would blow people away because of the fact that UCLA was 1-5 at the time, and now with the last couple of weeks here in the end of the season, they have a really, real good shot at it. I'm thinking, with these last couple of games, USC, Washington, Washington got blown out by Penn State, and then Fresno State. They just need 2 more wins. I think they can get it. It's going to be close. The USC game's a rivalry game, so who knows there, but they should beat Fresno State. They just need one of Washington, USC, so we'll see. Okay, moving on to another blowout that I was talking about earlier, Florida, Texas. coming into the game, we knew that DJ Lagway was more than likely not going to play. It was like probably a 95% chance that he wasn't going to play. And he didn't. He warmed up, but he never had his pads on during the game. So there was never really a chance there for him to play. And, Aiden Warner, he's just not talented. Threw 2 picks in this game. Jackson, the running back for Florida, had a fumble loss that really was detrimental in the beginning of the game, but it was never close. Florida made some stops early, but then it was just, they just got blown out. And offensively, they couldn't do anything for the first half at all. They got shut out 35-0. And, this game was never close. And, it stinks because it's like, if DJ Lagway is healthy in this game, there's a chance that Florida could at least like keep it within like a 2-score game. Probably. I think that's a good chance of that. But we never got to see that. And it's a shame because the team has been playing better. They were close against Georgia last week. And to get blown out like this is devastating. But, Scott Strickland gave Billy the vote of confidence. So he's coming back next year, regardless of the result. The rest of the year, Florida has Ole Miss, LSU, and FSU. LSU and Ole Miss at home, the FSU game on the road. They should beat Florida State. I mean, Florida State is just a terrible team. And if they beat one of LSU or Ole Miss, that's a bowl game. And that would be 6-6, improving on last year's 5-7 and no bowl game last year. So if they win the bowl game, then they would be 7-6. That would be not the end of the world considering what they've gone through. I think everyone is so frustrated because the beginning of the year, the Miami and the Texas A&M losses really frustrated everyone. And I get that. That was a terrible way to start the year. I was not happy with it either. It didn't make any sense that the whole 9 months of the offseason, we were told that the team was ready. They were practicing. They were, the talent was there. They're ready to take the next step. And then it was like, those 2 games, they looked like average at best. It was probably, that Miami team, like now looking back at it, like for the entirety of their season, their defense is terrible. Like they've allowed so many points, like every team that they've played, yet for whatever reason, Florida couldn't do anything. I know Graham Mertz is limited as far as his deep ball passing, and that really, hindered Florida at the beginning of the year. But either way, it's just frustrating because it's like Florida has so much talent, in the composite, the 24/7 composite. I think they were like 12th or 15th, and it's there. They're way deeper than they were the last 2 years. The defense is playing better. But this game, obviously, this Texas game, they're just. I think it was like they knew they were going to struggle offensively, and then like the defense just is like, why even bother? Because it's like we know we're going to get blown out. Like there's no chance of us doing anything offensively, and it was evident as the first quarter was going down. And there was a lack of effort. There was a lot of Olay tackling, arm tackling that Texas just ran right through. And it sucks because it's like it's not that like Florida would have beaten this team. I still don't think they would have beaten them even with DJ Lagway. But just to be competitive with a good team like this would be nice to see. Instead, just completely, shut out till a field goal in the third quarter, which, yay, the streak continues. But like, I don't know. It's just frustrating. Quinn Ewers has 5 TDs. Jacoby Jackson, besides that fumble, he had a really good game, 116 yards. And Jaden Baugh looked pretty decent as well. He had 88 yards. Two-headed monster, these guys, which is like funny because the last 2 years it's been Etienne and Montreal Johnson. And both of those guys are gone, even though they're still in college. Montreal, not gone, sorry, hurt. and then Etienne is gone. But now you have these two-headed monster with Jackson and Baugh, and they're almost as good, maybe even better than those two. They're both really good in pass protection. And, Baugh, I mean, the kid's a stud. He's only a freshman. And I don't know, Jacoby Jackson, junior college transfer. So has limited time with Florida, but I don't know how much more years he has left, but it's not going to be much. But running back room, we knew coming into this year was going to be fine, and it really has been. I think the best surprise has been the receiving core, especially DK. Badger was out, so that was definitely missing. Defensively in this game, like I said, Texas is very good, and if you're going to arm tackle, you're not going to be able to stop them, and they just, tore right through them. And then there was a couple plays where like no one was even covering anyone; they're just like wide open for TDs, and it's a shame that it's frustrating because the defense had been playing better. They played good against Georgia. They played, really good against UCF, really good against Kentucky, good against Tennessee, and then this game they just. Again, like I said, confidence plays a huge part in how people play. And if you're not able to, be confident in your ability of your offense, you're going to be, you're going to struggle defensively because you have no confidence that what you do is even going to be relevant to the situation, and you're just going to end up losing the game. Anyways, so let's move on to. Next game I have is Miami, Georgia Tech. I was watching the situation all week with Haynes King and if he was going to play. And they didn't play him all the way. They had him play like every other series. I don't even know what their rotation was. I mean, I watched the condensed game of it. So I watched all of it, but I couldn't really decipher what their breakdown of their back and forth was, but the guy that came in for him, Philo, I don't know if he was the same guy that was in the last couple of weeks because that guy was a different number. I'm almost positive, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know for sure. I don't remember that guy's name, but Philo did well enough, and Haynes King had 93 yards on the ground, which that was huge because he was basically operating, a de facto RPO game, but there was no pass. It was just essentially jet sweeps and, RPO off the handoff. And so he was moving all over the place. And that wasn't the issue with him. Like his throwing shoulder was the problem. So he wasn't going to be able to throw the ball a ton. And that's why Philo was in there, which, he did adequate enough, 50%. And, Haynes King was 6 of 6, but he didn't throw the ball very far. Every one of Haynes King's passes was like, a 5-yard dump or something really close that was easy on his arm. But just remarkable. This Tech team, I knew all year. I've been watching them because I was curious about this game, and I knew it was going to come up to this game because they looked good in that Florida State game, and they've struggled against Notre Dame and some other teams. But I knew if Haynes King was healthy enough that they could score enough points, and I knew they just needed like 24 or more points, and they were going to be able to beat this team because their defense has played remarkable all year. And I think that's the difference in this Tech team from the last couple of years because their defense was terrible, but their defense has been very good, and they made a lot of stops on Miami. I think they forced, as far as turnovers on downs, yeah, they were Miami was 1 of 4 on fourth down. So, kudos to Georgia Tech for being able to make those stops. And Miami was 3 of 10 on third down. That's terrible. And Georgia Tech was 9 of 14. That's the difference in the game right there. And they had the ball 10 minutes more than Miami. Miami was able to make huge chunk plays, which made this game look a lot closer than it probably was. If Tech could have limited those 2 chunk plays of the Arroyo play and then the Restrepo big touchdown. Like, this game would have been like a 10-28 game, and it would have been really bad. I said all year, I mean, I've been saying it since these last couple of games, that the teams that Miami played, they were not playing complete teams. And so, like, once they played someone that was really, like, kind of complete, that they both can, like, both their offense and defense are, like, good enough, that they were going to lose, and they lost. And then it was evident. Like, they were down in this game like 12 points, like, most of the second half, and Georgia Tech was kind of in control of this game. Miami scored late to make it look closer, and then, that fumble loss by Ward. Miami's defense is not good, and it really hasn't been all year. So I don't know what they expected with a terrible defense. Like, they had sky high expectations because Ward has been throwing the ball all over the place. But it's like, if you can't make stops on defense, if you can't keep teams to scoring under a certain threshold, you're not going to perform very well in the long run. And this is it. They still have a shot to get to the ACC championship game, but it's out of their control now because SMU and Pitt, I believe, are in front of them. No, Clemson is, sorry. Yeah, Clemson only had that one ACC loss. Pitt has 2 losses now. I think they lost yesterday. I didn't see it because it was probably to a crap team that I don't really care about. Yeah, Clemson lost, or Pitt lost to Virginia. I could care less, and that's why I'm kind of like, not sold on Pitt either. But no, Clemson looked good yesterday. We'll talk about that. But Miami, now it's outside of their control to see if they can get to Charlotte. But they have an easy one against Wake, and then that Syracuse game at the end in the Carrier Dome is going to be tough. I don't know if they can win that game, but it might be everything riding on that game. So they're going to need to win that one. But I like Clemson to get to the ACC championship game because their schedule, as far as the rest of the year, let me see what it is. Clemson has. So the Pitt game is going to decide if they go to the ACC championship game because they have Citadel and South Carolina. Those are non-con. So literally, Clemson just has to win the Pitt game, and they cement their bid to the ACC championship game. And then as far as SMU needs Boston College, Virginia, Cal. I mean, that Virginia team obviously looks spicy now, so maybe there's something there. Boston College, they should beat them. And that Cal team, by the end of the year, they're probably going to be like packing everything in. So maybe that Virginia game is what it's going to come down to, but not the toughest schedule for SMU to get in there. So they have a good shot. But yeah, Miami goes down, and I knew it was going to happen. It was just a matter of time. Okay. Navy USF. I will say this, that they did have the groundbreaking of the on-campus stadium around this past weekend. So at least there's that. And so I know that this game was a real bummer of a game because they were getting shut out to like near the very end of the game. But you know what? It is what it is. Navy's a good team. They're really good offensively. They're not great defensively, but they were opportunistic. And Archie made a lot of mistakes, 2 interceptions, and I believe he had a fumble loss. And, it is what it is. Archie is not that good. And, if you're committing 3 turnovers, you're not going to be in these games. They had some moments moving down the field. They just couldn't capitalize. And they only scored 7 points, which is a shame. But again, you play good teams like Navy who can move the ball really easily and score a lot of points. They're going to beat you if you're not playing up to a certain level. And this Navy team is potentially a 10-win team. And, USF is not that level. And I just, it's a shame. I don't know. I didn't get to watch the whole game because we were in Palm Springs, but just from seeing the highlights, it didn't look good. And defensively, I'm not mad at the team defensively. I'm just mad more at the turnovers. And you got to be able to hold on to the ball. I mean, they were 50% on third down, and they still couldn't win this game. 3 turnovers to Navy's 1. They only had the ball for 21 minutes. Like, if you only have the ball for 21 minutes, like, Christ, I mean, that's rough. That's terrible. Okay. Not much else to say. Just, glad we got the OCS, and that should be done in 2027. So, congrats to the university and everyone involved. And I'm glad it's moving forward. And the renderings look great, and I'm happy for it. And I cannot wait. I will definitely be there day one when the stadium opens up, whatever game that opponent they play against. So I'm excited for that. So 3 years away. Okay, moving on to Georgia Ole Miss. Dude, I'm like so jazzed that Ole Miss beat the crap out of Georgia. Like, this was just sweet. Like, this was the cherry topper after Miami already lost, and then Georgia comes in and just poops the bed. And Ole Miss just looked great in this game. Offensively, they were moving the ball. Defensively, they shut down Georgia for the most part. Beck only had 186 yards, an interception, and a fumble loss. I know Dart only had 199 yards, but he still had a touchdown and 50 yards on the ground. Dart looked really good. He got hurt early, came out of the game, came back. Austin Simmons came in. Florida fans know that guy was a potential recruit that backed out of his commitment and ended up at Ole Miss. Ole Miss dominated this game. They were up 16-7 at half. Georgia comes in, hits a field goal, and then, Ole Miss outscores them 13 more points and wins 28-10. Dominant game by Ole Miss. They almost double Georgia's total yardage output, 397 to 245. This Ole Miss team left for dead after those 2 losses to Kentucky and LSU, but now everything to play for. Like, literally, like, the rest of their schedule is not that difficult. And I know they have Mississippi State, and they have like one other game, and that's Florida, which, I mean, if DJ plays, it's in the swamp. We'll see. But like, as of right now, if Ole Miss wins out, I would guarantee them a playoff spot. I don't know who else you would take out. A 2-loss Ole Miss team that beat Georgia. Like, come on now. And destroyed Arkansas, which is a decent team, and beat South Carolina, which has been a really good team. I know the losses look bad. The Kentucky loss looks real bad, but I don't know. I feel like you'd have to give this Ole Miss team a spot in the playoff if they win out, if they go 10-2. I think you'd have to. It doesn't make any sense to keep them out. And I hate saying that because that would mean they'd beat Florida, but it just means I want to see good football. I want to see good playoff teams, and I think Ole Miss could be one. I think they're capable of beating definitely any team 5 through 12, and then we'll see what they do with one of those 1 through 4 teams. But I can see them definitely being the first round win for sure. Okay, which would be cool. An Ole Miss home playoff game would be pretty exciting. Okay, next game, Clemson, Virginia Tech. Clemson wins 24-14. This game was never close. Schlee came in for Va-Tech. I had no idea Schlee was playing for them. He was at UCLA previously, and he's whatever. He's very athletic, but he's not the best passer. But they score a late touchdown to make it look closer. But yeah, Clemson was in complete control of this game, dominated, and Va-Tech got a blocked field goal for a touchdown. and that was like the only like points they had scored for most of the game. Drones did not look good. 9 for 20, 115 yards and interception. Klubnik, had 3 TDs, but kind of an average day, an interception and 16 of 34, but did enough to win. Maffa looked great. Phil Maffa, still a stud running back. This Clemson team, they can get in the ACC championship game. If they win out 2 losses, 1 to Georgia, 1 to Louisville, definitely if they beat whoever in the ACC championship game, they'll be the ACC champion and be one of the 4 top conference champions, and they would get in. They'd get a first round bye, which is crazy. But this team's defense is strong enough to beat anybody, and I think their offense is there. It just struggled in that Louisville game for whatever reason, and struggled against Georgia, which first game of the year I can see, but I think that Louisville game is the one that's really kind of like stood out because it's like, I don't know what happened there. I mean, I watched the recap of that and I still don't understand what happened. But this Clemson team could be an interesting team going forward. They have to win out. But even if they lose like South Carolina or the ACC if they lose the ACC championship game, they're not getting in. But if they win out, but lose to South Carolina, then it would be not a good look for the ACC to have a 3-loss champion. But whatever, there's not much you can do. So let's move on to Indiana, Michigan. I was really excited for this game. I thought Indiana was going to blow them out, but Michigan really held their own. Defensively, Michigan really stifled Indiana in the second half. Indiana looked really good first half. They were moving the ball. They had like 17 points. I think it was 17-3 at half. But then Indiana had like no yards coming into the fourth quarter. But they did end up moving the ball late and got a late field goal to make it look like a bigger win. But even though it was only 2015, the game was 17-15 near the end. So it was a close game. Indiana was in control for the most part, but Michigan came back and they held their own. Like they really did. I was surprised. I thought Indiana was going to score a lot on them. I think this Michigan team had a lot of pride to play up to, some of the guys' ability from the last couple of years where they've been playoff team and now they're just like a shell of themselves. And it stinks. It's, it's rough for them, but it's like, it just is what it is. They had like 2 returning starters on either offense or defense, like 7 total between both sides. So it's like they didn't have a lot coming back. And I think that's a big reason why Harbaugh left, because Harbaugh knew that the team was going to be terrible this year. And he's like, oh, why come back and just deal with again, like the threat of being fired? So he's like, you know what? I won the championship. I'm out of here. And, this Indiana team, Cignetti, I've been big on him, especially to potentially replace Billy Napier. But, they're 10-0. Like, I don't think anyone would have thought coming into this year that Indiana would have a chance to even come to like 8 wins. And now they're 10-0 with a huge game next week against Ohio State, or 2 weeks, November 23rd. I cannot wait for this game. Indiana, Ohio State. Right now it's an 8-3. Indiana may move up by then because a team or two might lose. So this is going to be the biggest Indiana Ohio State game ever. And if they win, they pretty much guarantee their spot in the playoff. They would guarantee a spot in the Big Ten championship game. And regardless if they lost that or not, I think they almost guarantee that they go to the playoffs. So it's like, this is crazy. Like a team that has never done anything in like their entire history now has like a legitimate shot of not only getting into the playoffs, but messing things up and like really like winning a game or two in the playoffs, which I don't think like I said, I don't think anybody would have saw this coming. It's an amazing story. It's great. I'm excited for Cignetti to see where he goes after this as well, because he's not staying in Indiana. I think it's, hey, it's great, but whatever like major job comes opening, if this year, which I don't think any are, there really isn't any except for the Florida one, but it doesn't seem likely at this point. But next year there could be some. There could be like an LSU, could be like a USC, could be anybody. Maybe Marcus Freeman leaves Notre Dame. Maybe Ryan Day gets fired. I don't know, whatever. But definitely a lot of big openings next year, probably. But this year for sure, there's like nothing. But we'll see. Maybe there'll be something. We just don't know it yet. Maybe someone leaves and we're not even aware of it. Okay, next game we had Iowa State, Kansas. Kansas really kind of took it to them. They were up, let's see, 31-13 at half. And Iowa State came back and made it a game, but it was almost always a 10-point game near the end of the game. It was 2 scores no matter what. And Kansas just kept pacing with them. And so Iowa State never really got closer. And, credit to Iowa State for not giving up, but they've kind of imploded last couple of weeks. It started with that UCF game where they lost, they barely won at the last second. And then they lost last week to Texas Tech. And then this week they they lose to Kansas. And, I don't know what it is. Like Iowa State just cannot win more than 10 games. It's like that's their like ceiling, and it's like their all-time ceiling. Like throughout their like 120-year history, they've never been able to win more than that. And Matt Campbell seems like a lifer there at Iowa State, and he just can't seem to get over the hump for that Iowa State team. This looked like it was going to be one of those years that they were finally going to do it, and they just couldn't. Shame for that, but Kansas, for a 2-win team to get this win was huge because they still have a shot at getting to a bowl game. I don't know if they do get it because they have a tough schedule the rest of the year. And Iowa State is still not technically out of the Big 12 mix, but it's a lot less likely after this loss. Okay, moving on to Army, North Texas. I'm telling you, man, I really like this Army team a ton. Their defense is super, super tough. Their DBs are very, they're ball hawks. That's all I can describe it as, because they go after the ball when it's in the air, and they have so many interceptions. They're just, I don't know what it is, because it's like they obviously don't have like a great enough like passing quarterback that's a scout team, because I don't get how they're able to translate that, because the majority of what they play during the week, they defend against is their quarterback Daly, who, very rarely throws the ball. He's 2 of 4 in this game and an interception. But they're the DBs for Army are stout, and like these guys are studs, and they've been strong all year. Like literally every game, they have kept them in games because of how good their defense is. And they've made plays. They like a couple of plays in the end zone to make a difference in these games. And they held them to 3 points. They had a 4th down stop. Just a crazy game for them. It was 14-3. I think Daly, looked great. 153 yards on the ground, 36 carries for a quarterback. That's insane. Yeah, and if you look at the total yardage, 15 passing yards, which, Army never passes it, but 293 on the ground. And they held North Texas to 283. North Texas is not a bad team. They were 5-3 coming into this game. This is a good win for Army. The rest of the year, Army has Notre Dame in 2 weeks, another huge game. So you got Indiana, Ohio State, and you got Army, Notre Dame. Could be almost like a playoff eliminator, essentially. I believe Army will beat UTSA after that. And then the Army-Navy game, I believe, could go either way because both of those offenses are really good. But exciting stuff for Army. I hope they win out. We'll see against Notre Dame. If the defense is good enough, I think they keep them in the game, and I think their offense is good enough to score at least 20 on Notre Dame, and I think that would be good enough to win that game because I think their defense can hold them to like 17. So we'll see. I mean, that's 2 weeks away, but I'm excited. Like I always say, I'm an Army ROTC alum, for a year. So I definitely root for Army more than any other team outside of USF and Florida. So, okay. Colorado, Texas Tech. Texas Tech was up 13-0, and then Colorado just came back. A lot of what their offense is these like screenplays, and their offensive, their playmakers just, out talent the guys. And, they just make plays that way. Didn't look like Shador threw the ball in the air a ton, but he still had 291 yards passing and 3 TDs. Texas Tech, I don't know a ton about. I watched that Iowa State game and they won that one, but they're 6-4, so I'm not like super impressed with them. I thought there was a chance here that Colorado could lose, but Colorado gets the win. Colorado now has 3 more games, and they have Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State. The Kansas game is on the road, so that one is interesting. I think that's probably the one that's likely going to like bite them a little bit. But right now, Colorado is second in the Big 12, and if they win out, they would get it. So anything is possible for them. If they do lose a game, they would be tied with Kansas State, and because Kansas State beat them, Kansas State would go. So Kansas State has to hope for a Colorado loss, which is possible. Kansas State, after that Houston loss was just terrible. They have some tough games. They have Arizona State, Cincinnati, and Iowa State. So, it's still a long way to go for Kansas State, but Colorado has an easier road, and really only that Kansas game that's going to be a possibility of being a problem. Okay, moving on. South Carolina, Vanderbilt. This game was never close. Vanderbilt struggled immensely in this one, only scoring 7 points. South Carolina wins 28-7. Sellers looked great in this game. What's his name? Raheem Sanders for South Carolina. 126 on the ground, 52 receiving yards, 3 total TDs. He killed it. Like, this kid, Sanders, looked great. I know I've followed him a little bit throughout the year, but I was like, I wonder how, he just went off in this game. So this is a guy to look out for the rest of the year, especially their game against Clemson. But again, South Carolina, a team that everyone probably left for dead, has really rose up 6-3. They have the Clemson game, Wofford, which they should win easily, and then Missouri next week. So, that Missouri game is interesting because Missouri still, Eli Drinkowitz actually thought that his team is still in the playoff hunt, which they're not even in the top 25 because you're such frauds. You got smoked by the only 2 good teams that you played, but South Carolina can put a nail in their coffin if they beat them. So we'll see. Okay, moving on to real quick, not even gonna touch base on this much. Notre Dame wins 52-3 against Florida State. They're 1-9, worst record since 1974. Not much else to say. You better eat the poop out of the Solo Cup. That's all I gotta say. Alabama, LSU. Alabama wins 42-13. This game was never close. It was, 14-3 at the end of the first quarter, 21-6 at halftime, and just Milroe show all day. And Milroe ran all over them. He had 185 yards, 4 TDs on the ground. It was basically LSU's karma for what they did to Florida last year with Jaden Daniels. No, I mean, obviously there's no karma for another team, but whatever. Nussmeier did not look good. 2 interceptions, was getting sacked a ton of pressure on him. LSU's offense looked pedestrian at best. They get a late TD to make it look closer. than it was, and it never was close. 42-13. They scored the touchdown at like the last play, I believe. Just terrible game by LSU, but that honestly is interesting because now it looks like they might struggle against Florida, and the game is next week, so anything is possible. Right now, I think it's like a 60% chance that LSU wins and 40% that Florida wins in the FPI on ESPN, but I don't know. LSU just did not look good. If DJ Lagway comes back, Florida has a good shot at that game, but it just depends on Lagway. If he's not in there, Warner does not strike fear in anyone. And I'd rather see that backup, the Colorado State kid. I don't even know his name, but I don't want to see Warner anymore. It's not worth it to me. It's just a waste of time. Washington, Penn State. So this is another blowout. Penn State wins 35-6. This game was never close. Penn State just took it to them. Katron Allen had a big game, and I believe Nick Singleton had a big game too. Let me see. Oh, no. Corey Smith. Yeah, so Nick Singleton did all right too. But three-headed monster. I think they had close to 300 yards rushing, 266. Yeah, so they dominated this Washington team, and then defensively, they were able to shut them down. They were 4 of 13 on third down. Washington was. So this game was never close. And Penn State gets back off the schneid after losing to Ohio State. They've got, what are there, 3 games left? Purdue, Minnesota, Maryland. They should win out. So if they don't go to the Big Ten championship game, which doesn't seem likely because Indiana, Oregon, and Penn State or Ohio State have better records, it's likely Oregon, and then it's likely the winner of Ohio State, Indiana. So, but Penn State will sneak into the playoff, which is exactly what I thought coming in this year, because it's like, Franklin has struggled forever to get into the playoff and never did it, was never able to accomplish that feat. And then lo and behold, expand the playoff. Now they get in, and they're just going to get smoked because they're going to play a decent team, and they're going to get beat by, I don't know, Ole Miss, or they're going to get beat by BYU or somebody like that. Just Penn State is not good enough. They really aren't. But they're probably going to get a home playoff game, so at least they'll have an advantage there. But I just don't see Penn State doing much in the playoffs at all. Okay, Nevada, Boise State. My dude, Ashton Genty, 209 yards on the ground, 3 TDs. Not going to talk much about this game. Just talk about him. If anyone is going to win the Heisman, it's got to be this kid. I know Cam Ward was potentially being it, but he lost. So, like, quarterback of an undefeated team, yes, it has value there, but they lost, so that can go by the wayside. Even though he has decent numbers, and he'll probably go to New York. Travis Hunter, awesome two-way player. It's amazing feat and is likely not to be done anytime soon. But his numbers aren't through the roof on either side of the ball. They're very good, and it is amazing to see. But Genty is putting all-world numbers out there, and he has a really good shot at putting up 30 touchdowns. And if he puts up 30 touchdowns in the grand scheme of college football running backs in total touchdowns, I know Barry Sanders has 37, and I think his other big year was a big number as well. But outside of him, there's very little running backs have ever done something like that. So if he gets to 30, which is a possibility, I really like his chance of winning the award, and I think he deserves it. I think he's the best player. I think he is, it's evident. Like he puts up 200 yards like almost every game. He has 23 touchdowns, 7.7 yard average, 1,734 yards. I mean, the guy's a freak, and he's, what is it? Yeah, look at his numbers: 209, 149, 128, 217, 186, and he just puts up huge numbers. And like his you know explosive plays: 75, 54, 35, 46. He does it every game. He just has huge runs every game. Like he is super fast. In that Oregon game, that's when I first saw it. I was like, holy crap, this guy is like lightning quick, and he just zooms by everyone. But they get the win 28-21. Real good shot of getting to the playoff if they win out. It's right now it's between Boise State and Army, who gets the group of 5 representative in the playoff. I'm hoping Army, because I think Army is a better overall team. And obviously I'm biased because the Army ROTC stuff, but Boise State, I think, with Genty would pose a problem because he would be able to run over anyone or run through anyone. We'll see. Okay, last game, saving the best for last. BYU, Utah, 22-21, last second field goal. BYU hits it. So much controversy in this game. There's a lot of calls that Utah fans were unhappy about. The Utah AD was pissed and got fined for his comments about the game. Just a crazy game. Utah scores a ton of points in the second quarter and looks like they're going to coast to a win. They're up 21-10, and then just BYU comes back. This team, I'm telling you, man, there's something about this BYU team. They've got a lot of grit, and Retzlaff makes enough plays. He really does. He went like a streak of I think it was 9 incompletions in a row near the end of the game. And then that last drive, he just turned it on and just started completing passes and just getting them down the field. Gets in the position, and boom, they scored. And again, another non-offensive touchdown. What I've been talking about all year with them. They have so many. It's crazy. They're just one of these teams that special teams, defense, they just know how to create scores off of different mistakes by the other team. And they've won these games because they can play all phases of the game. They are a very unique, complete team where offensively they're not top tier, but they're good enough, especially with their RPO stuff and their trick plays and whatever. They're very efficient and very methodical when they have the ball. Defensively, they're very opportunistic, and their special teams has been making plays all year. So this team, I'm telling you, man, there's something about this team that is very interesting. They're 9-0. The rest of the year they have Arizona State, Kansas, Houston. Not an easy layout considering Kansas and Houston have decent wins the last couple of weeks. And Arizona State is not an easy out as well. So it's going to be tough. I think they can do it. I think they have a leeway of at least one loss and they could still get in. But it's going to be interesting. This Big 12, you got BYU, you got Colorado, you got Kansas State, you got Iowa State, you got what's the other one? Arizona State, Iowa State. Yeah. So, and even West Virginia has 2 losses and potentially a shot of it, but they'd have to have a lot of help. But crazy. This Big 12 is going to be interesting all the way to the end. But again, I like this BYU team a ton. I think there's a lot to like there, and we'll see. That is the show, everyone. I'm officially tired. I was on vacation all weekend, and I worked Thursday and Friday, so I have not gotten much sleep, and I'm exhausted. Thank you for staying with us up late. I know we normally do the show at 5 p.m. Eastern, or 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, but thank you for staying with us. I just wanted to say thank you for all of you for subscribing. We have 1,000 subscribers since the beginning of the year, which is amazing. That's, huge growth in the last 3 months. And, the goal of my of the year for this show was to get 1,000 subscribers just total. And we did that even before, the end of the season. And now potentially we could get to at least 2,000, maybe even more, maybe 2,500 or 3,000. So stuff is growing really quick. I really appreciate all of you. So like, subscribe, comment, follow, everything. Help us out, share, do whatever you can to help out the algorithm, to help us get, people talking about Hater Radio. This is who we are. And, haterradio.com for all of our articles. Socials, it is at hater_radio for Twitter, X, TikTok, Instagram, Threads. For Facebook, it is Hater Radio CFB. For YouTube, it is at Hater Radio. Ian will probably be back on Wednesday. A lot of great games coming up. This is the end of the season. Enjoy this stuff. The season goes by really quick. But again, we have a huge playoff this year. And so it's going to be a lot more interesting, a lot different than years past. So, there's a lot more to think about now where teams are involved. So enjoy these games coming up. I'm really excited for everything in the next couple of weeks. And we'll talk to you later. Have a good one. See you Wednesday.